What's up, First Case Network? We're back with episode 2 of your Sterile Processing Quality Improvement Expert Series. We're here with Marcy Conja and Greg Agustin. And if you missed episode 1, I want to encourage you to go back. We got some great history to how did we end up where we are today with these systemic sterile processing quality issues that we see around here. And we talked a little bit about the human resource side, the training side. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot more about that in this 12-part series. But today, we're going to start defining the variables that tell us what quality is. And obviously, if we know what we're measuring, it's going to be a lot easier to pay attention to them and to build strategies and plans to reach that level of quality. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. So, Greg, maybe kick us off. How would you define what quality looks like in sterile processing?
Yeah, so I defined quality, Hank, in a very systematic way based upon Lean Six Sigma, and looking at sterile processing strictly as a production area. We're manufacturing a product, and that product is being manufactured for the ultimate use of the surgeon, right? So we can process instruments. If it gets delivered to the OR, there's not a surgeon in that room, nothing happens. So our real end goal customer is the surgeon. We just want to make sure he or she has the tools necessary to provide service to their patient, right? And in doing that, we help improve patient quality of care.
So, Marcy, what are some concrete examples of that? Obviously, there's a lot of things you could put in that category that Greg just listed out, but what are some ones that you would say are really priority variables here?
Staffing, actually, and making sure that they're proficient. I have been in a number of hospitals. Greg and I tour all over the country, and I would say that I rarely come across a hospital sterile processing department that is adequately staffed. One of the things that we see is that the OR has expanded. They've added more rooms. So they have a new team on. They have a new nurse tech and, whatever's needed for that individual team room. But sometimes they don't think about sterile processing. They don't think about the person that they need to add downstairs or how many people they need to add to support those rooms. And it's really not by room number or case volume. It's by complexity of cases, types of instruments, and volume of instruments that we look at for just the OR. But some of the other things that we look at is the duties that the sterile processing department does. A lot of them do durable medical equipment for the floors, make rounds on the floors. So all of those are things that we look at when we're determining a staffing model for a department. You have to look at everything that they possibly can do.
Okay, Marcy, you brought up a really important point there about the proficiency of the staff as well as the number of the staff. And I definitely see that, to your point, even if they're not technically understaffed on paper, if you start digging into the proficiency of their staff, many times that's where the gap is. It's like, yeah, you got the right number of heads, but the training and the gaps in trainings has led us to a really inefficient staff processing workflow, et cetera. And so, yeah, terrific points to highlight. Greg, what about equipment and supplies? What role does that have in this quality conversation?
Yeah, so what Marcy and I have done, and again, kind of looking at broadly the goals of sterile processing. So we boiled it down to keep it very simple. We call it AFS. So availability of instruments when needed, functionality of those instruments, and safety of those instruments. Those are the three goals that the SPD has got to satisfy for each and every patient, right? Instruments must be available, functional, and safe. Meaning tested functionality. We also follow the IFUs for processing and sterilization, and it's safe to use on the patient. What we find is when, staffs are put under pressure because of quick turnover or whatever it may be, volume of work that's sitting in the department that needs to be processed, staff will switch over and convert to availability, right? They'll skip steps for functionality testing, may not test scissors, may not test insulation, may not look down the bore, things, etc. They'll also perhaps skip steps in the processing. Maybe they don't ultrasonically clean. Maybe they don't brush and flush. Maybe they skip, different, processing times for, soaking in that. And when that happens, then you result in these errors. So those AFS goals are primary. And then we looked at the 4 variables that Marcy hit on the first 2, which were number of staff, staff proficiency, equipment and supply is the next one, because we go into a lot of hospitals and we find that equipment actually causes significant problems with quality and production. If the equipment is not maintained, we've gone into numerous facilities where we've looked at washers, cart washers, and literally a recent hospital, 50% of the nozzles of the cart washer were blocked with fuzz and plastic and debris. So they weren't spraying. So therefore, you're not getting proper cleaning, and it results in higher errors, contaminants being left in the instrument trays and containers and things of that. So that equipment and supply component is the third leg. And then the fourth leg of it is the efficiency. So you got 4 variables that the SPD manager can work with: number of staff, staff proficiency, equipment and supplies, and then efficiency. So what are you doing to improve your efficiency in the department? And that is really related to throughput. So, have you optimized your instrument sets? Have you looked at ways that the operating room can help set up the instruments so that they become, easier to process when they arrive in the decontamination area? Really, when you think about it, again, back to, SPD being a manufacturing site, we're producing a product. Your raw material coming into that department comes from the operating room in 90% of the cases. Now, you buy some new instruments that are raw materials, but 90+% of it is stuff that's instruments coming from the operating room. That's your raw material. And if you think about it in that way in a manufacturing process, if your raw material is coming in and you're the Henry Ford plant here in Detroit and trying to build motors, and the pieces of parts are all mixed up and disassorted, some of them are clean, some of them are not clean, you've got to get all these things put together. That is what we look at from the operating room. So the operating room really is a critical component in helping us supply raw materials in the proper form and condition so that the SPD can do their job efficiently. So those 4 variables are the variables that every SPD manager has to work with. And if there's a shortage in any one of those, you're going to have quality and/or production problems in the hospital.
Yeah, that efficiency topic, I could spend a couple of episodes just to get into that with you. And I think that's a great analogy, like for the manufacturing impact of that. I want to ask you one last question here, Marcy. This is an important one. A lot of administrators, a lot of operating rooms feel like today, if I got a gold seal of approval from the Joint Commission, how bad could the issues really be in SPD? Why is that maybe not a good assumption today?
Um, while I love the Joint Commission and the DNB and et cetera, all their accrediting groups, I do know that they have a limited time within the department, and their focus sometimes is on specific things that they're comfortable with, that they know they've been educated on. But the department as a whole, there's multiple areas in there that can go wrong. And I'll be honest, as a sterile processing manager, I was able to guide people through the department how I wanted them to, or you can answer a question. That doesn't mean you're always doing it. So you have to have the proof. And when Greg and I go in and look at hospitals, we want to find the good and applaud what they're doing, but we also want to find what's wrong to help you fix it. Documentation, how they're running the sterilizers, how people are inspecting the instruments are all things that we look at. And Joint Commission isn't always looking at that.
Right. And to your point, they've got a big job and they got a short time to do it. And so nobody's knocking them doing what they can do. But we all know, who's been on the clinical side, there's a lot of doors to open. There's a lot of books to review. There's a lot of training manuals to take a look at. And it can be really, really easy to miss really systemic quality breakdowns like Greg was kind of alluding to. So I think that's a great call out. We're going to wrap episode 2 right here. We're going to go next episode into a theme that's already come up on the first 2 episodes. We're going to dig into it a little more thoroughly on episode 3, and that's the question around sterile processing staffing. It is a challenge. It's one of those, if you talk to an operating room manager, it's got responsibilities for SPD. It's always, how do I find these people? How do I keep these people? How do I train these people? So we're going to spend a couple of minutes on episode 3 really digging into that. But I want to thank you both for your time today, and I want to thank everyone else that's tuning in to this 2025 Sterile Processing Quality Improvement Expert Series. Really appreciate your time. Tell your friends, tell your fellows across your OR or even across the street, hey, it's a great conversation happening today that's going to help us improve our SPD, because we all know the stronger SPD is, the better that the OR can do their job. And that's what we all want for the patient at the end of the day. Until we see you all again, keep working hard in that OR, and we'll talk to you again next month.